Adventurous tours are always fun. There's really never a bad group, bad person. It just doesn't really happen. If you're into this sort of trip, you're gonna have fun regardless. Since the starting point and the ending point in any circular journey is the same, it's all about the journey. What I try to do with most of my tours is really kind of live by that motto that it's an adventure, not a vacation. So you see a lot, we do a lot, we wish we would do more, but this is the ultimate amount of sights and activities you can pack into the days that we do. So this is not a 9 to 5 with a pleasant stop somewhere for a sit-down 2-hour lunch. This is pretty much go, go, go. This is an adventure to get absolutely the most possible out of the days that you spend with us.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is your director speaking. Today we're going to be sharing a glimpse of the most amazing off-road adventure you can have in Iceland. What am I doing here? I'm not an off-roader. I drive a freaking minivan. Okay. Alright. Let me introduce myself. My name is Steven. I'm a filmmaker from Utah. That's me, in Iceland. That is our guide. His name is Guðmundur Birgit Haversen. I hope I said that right. We called him GB. I haven't met very many Icelanders, but I'm pretty sure he's the coolest one. I traveled with a group of off-road enthusiasts to Iceland for a 9-day adventure around the country. We had 5 couples, and then there was Ty and myself. He and I ran cameras, and you've already met GB. We traveled in 4 vehicles. GB drove his Nissan Patrol, we took turns driving his Jeep Gladiator, and we rented 2 Toyota Land Cruisers that we lovingly called Master and Baby Yoda. Every day in Iceland was amazing. I thought about making this a chronological film, but we really don't remember things that way. Think about your favorite vacation. It doesn't run through your head from beginning to end. We remember what we felt. So, instead of giving a day-to-day record of what happened, I've broken everything down into sections. The journey, river crossings, hot springs, Amsterdam, it'll make sense when we get there, waterfalls, Iceland, GB, food, glaciers, and lava fields. So strap in, turn your headlights on, that's the law in Iceland, and here we go.
Let me say that slowly. Eyjafjallajökull. But this is a non-geothermal area. So when I took a shower this morning, no smell, right?
Yeah.
So this is not a geothermal area. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
I took one yesterday in the waterfall.
Anyway, so I'm gonna go and grab the lunch and we'll get out of here.
So, Steven, what was an average day like on your Iceland trip? Thank you for asking. Let's turn on some catchy music and talk it over. Every hotel room had blackout curtains. The sun rose before 6. Breakfast, the briefing. Load the vehicles. Drive. Stop. Air down the tires. Look. Listen. Take it all in. Drive. Rivers. Restrooms. Sheep. Dust. Horses. Tunnels. Bridges. Feeding horses. Fuel stops. Rest stops. Lunch stops. Walking. Photos. Videos. More photos. More videos. Drive.
Be prepared for long, exciting days. It's amazing how much you can fit in a day with the right organization and the right group of people, because it feels like we fit a month's worth of excitement into just a few days. and that's pretty amazing.
Dust, walking, looking, listening, wondering. Whales, trying to take it all in. Hoping this changes you. Driving, airing up the tires, driving more. Dinner time, sleep time.
My favorite parts, the river crossings, are really cool. But the scenery, oh my gosh, just so beautiful. And of course getting to play with, you know, big tires in Iceland. I mean, what's not to like about it?
There was only one person on this trip who was not a serious off-roader, and it was me. I own 2 cars, one of them is a minivan, and of the 2, it is the superior off-road vehicle. So when someone says,
we're gonna go into the interior, so we're gonna Christian you in river crossings.
I get excited and a little nervous. No matter how capable an off-road vehicle is, there's still something unnatural about driving across a river. I mean, see that bus? It knows where it's supposed to be, and not supposed to be. That said, not all buses are created equal.
And I don't know that I have the answer to the question of why do we do this. But I think we just need to force ourselves to get out of the daily grind. When you stop your life and go and live your life, you just feel better. And you feel like all the work that I do every day, 9 to 5 or 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. is worth it when you can go and have these experiences that you'll probably never have again.
And just watch out, especially with this one, that there are going to be some rough rocks. Okay.
As long as there have been humans, rivers have been used as boundaries. And as long as there have been boundaries, humans have been crossing them. No matter how good your vacation is, there's always that pull to think about normal life, what you left behind, to not really be where you are because your mind is back at home or in the office. But when you're out here crossing rivers in Iceland, that is all there is. The rivers scared me, but in a good way. Like when you're a kid and your dad tosses you in the air. You know it's going to be okay, but there's that chance that it could go wrong. But the fact is, you love it, and you can't get enough of it. Remember when GB said this?
We're gonna Christian you in river crossings. Do it.
Not every river crossing was accomplished with wheels.
You alright?
I wanted to cross the river. I did not want to get my socks wet, and I did not want to fall in the water with my brand new camera. When conflicting ideas try to occupy the same space, the only way forward is with a new idea. It wasn't exactly a christening, but I definitely felt more connected to Iceland than I did before.
Yeah, go Steven!
Maybe I'm not so out of place after all.
That's a little cold.
For most of the group, this was a vacation. For me, this was a big job. Filming something I've never filmed, in a place I've never been, with nothing but the contents of my luggage to make it happen. Like Caesar crossing the Rubicon, there was no going back. We had come to Iceland for an adventure, and that is exactly what we were going to get.
The word for ignorant in Icelandic is heimskur, which is a derivative of the word heim, which means home. And the idea is from the Viking times essentially that the person that sits at home does not get an education and purview into the wider array of things and information and experiences. So hence ignorance and sitting at home is a little bit kind of tied in our language.
Well, if you don't ever venture outside of your home, you don't know what the possibilities that are out there for you. I grew up thinking that what was around me was all that I could accomplish. It wasn't until I met my husband that I was introduced to more of an adventurous lifestyle. All the things that I didn't know existed, that I didn't know I could accomplish or reach for, were given to me. You step outside of your own little bubble, there's a lot more out there for you that you can experience.
When I turn on hot water at home, the heat comes from electricity and natural gas, which came to my house from a facility a few miles away. That's not how Iceland does hot water. There are more volcanoes in Iceland than any other island in the world. And when those volcanoes aren't keeping the Icelanders on their toes, they're keeping their showers hot and their hot springs even hotter.
I know you can't have it. I took two.
What's it like?
It's hot, really. This part right here is really hot. Not so much here or here, but right here it's really hot. It smells like Wyoming. You can't smell this right now, but it is bad. Just take your armpit.
Before the advent of zoom lenses, so people would kind of stand in here somewhere, and then they would, want to take a picture, and would get a little wider, and they would stand back, and then suddenly, boom, you step into the next one. Now, as I mentioned, this is a central scene in Game of Thrones. Unfortunately, when they came here to film it, they found out that the humidity was too much for the equipment, and they, it would fog up, and the electronics were a little bit too difficult for them, so they created an exact replica out of styrofoam and wood, and filmed the scene there. Yeah.
No way.
So the scene was actually not filmed in here; it was filmed in a replica of the cave. That's funny. Yeah.
I knew a man who once said, "We should learn to be comfortable while being uncomfortable." This is hot water, this is cold water, and this is nuts. There is actual science that says exposing your body to this kind of stress is good for you. I suppose if you consider how tall, slim, and annoyingly good-looking the average Icelander is, maybe they're onto something. We drove a couple of hours to get to this place. I loved the light here. Sunshine in the foreground, shadows in the back. An hour earlier or an hour later, and it would have looked completely different. There was a very middle of nowhere feel here. Iceland feels so big while you're here, but it's really not. So that means nowhere isn't all that far from anywhere. You can also see the second and third largest glaciers in Iceland from here. I guess you could say there's hot water in the foreground and cold water in the background. Tony and Lacey went to the Blue Lagoon by themselves before the adventure began. They got to see it in the sunshine. The rest of us went there on our last day in Iceland, and we got to experience it in all its stormy glory. The Blue Lagoon is closer to the airport than Reykjavik, which means it's pretty much the easiest, most touristy place in the entire country to get to. But the Blue Lagoon reminds us that just because something's easy to see doesn't mean it's not worth seeing.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Come on!
It's not Old Faithful.
Okay, let's walk. 3, 2, 1.
I think it's phenomenal that you can time that sucker every 7 minutes. I mean, that's amazing.
Throughout the trip, I watched all these couples I was traveling with enjoying their time together. It made me miss my better half. If you find yourself going to Iceland, take someone you love.
What I've gained by solidifying my relationship with summer during these past few days is worth all the money in the world to me. So is it worth it? Heck yeah. And would I do it again? At the drop of a hat.
So our flight to Minnesota got delayed, which made it so we're going to miss our flight to Iceland. So we've been rerouted to...
You know that stupid thing that at first you really wish didn't happen, but that actually turns out pretty cool? Here's a confession. This was my fault. 2023 was a rough year for me. It really got to me. And right up to the moment when we got on the plane, I was certain that I was not going to get a go. The year had so many disappointments that the idea of doing something as incredible as going to Iceland was impossible. Something's gonna screw it up. I'll get COVID. I'll break a bone. Something is gonna go wrong. I am not a pessimist, but that's the kind of year that I had. Being discouraged is its own kind of disease, and it's one that I really need to kick to the curb. Thank you, Amsterdam, for being the best disappointment of 2023. Now, back to Iceland. It's such a simple idea. You take moving water and add gravity. But there's no way to describe what it feels like to be next to this kind of power.
Thanks. Can you see me though? Because I'm kind of camouflaged. So I thought I might blend in if I hold still.
That's the best water I've ever tasted.
Waterfalls speak to my soul. You can't stop it. It's loud, it's wet, it is Mother Nature in a strong, powerful form, and it's beautiful and dangerous and yet amazing all at the same time.
So we just went for a little hike and the river got in our way. I decided to bring some of it home with me.
This was not a pleasant walk to a picturesque photo opportunity. We were soaked after this. And we all learned the difference between water resistant and waterproof. I'm looking at you, Columbia.
I haven't thought of this trip at all as a destination. That's kind of what's great about it, is there is no destination. It's all about the journey. And it has, you know, highs and lows like every other journey. That it takes effort to get to some of these places that makes it so special and unforgettable. If everyone could just, you know, drive their car up to it and walk to it, everybody would.
This valley felt like an in-between place, like we were just passing through on our way to somewhere else, until GB pulled off into this little turnaround. A couple of other cars slowed down, and I imagine they were trying to figure out what we stopped for, but they couldn't see anything obvious, so they just kept on going. Drinking from streams, getting too close to the edge. These were things we would never let our kids do, but maybe that's why it was so much fun. We'd always wanted to, and now we got to. This is an honorary mention on our waterfall tour. It is the output of a hydroelectric dam. But even knowing that it was not the work of Mother Nature, it still stirred something.
Is that what my name translates to as lassie? Or lazy?
No, that would be...
Sometimes nature pulls off something so strange, it almost looks unnatural. These basalt columns form when lava cools really fast.
Waterfall in Iceland that I can't pronounce.
That's exactly right.
The falling waterfalls. And yeah, the joke is they fall so hard you have to say it twice.
Long before we saw these falls, we could hear them. The most powerful waterfall in Europe. More than 52,000 gallons of water passes over these falls every second. Of all the falling water we saw, one stands out. There was no visitor center, no parking lot, no sidewalks, no handrail. There was nothing between us and Iceland.
Part of the lure for this trip for me was that we would be driving ourselves. That just put like the icing on the cake of it, to be able to drive ourselves, you know, four-wheel drive. It's not rock crawling, it's not hardcore, but it's definitely overlanding type experience, going through the rivers and the dirt roads and traversing stuff.
I've heard it said you can't know where you're going until you know where you've been. GB is from Iceland. He makes me wish I knew my own homeland as well as he knows his. As we drove, he would tell us all fascinating things about what we were seeing. On the first day, he told us these were toffees for the mountain trolls. they're actually hay bales wrapped in plastic.
Back in the day, before we had paths, there was search and rescue here at least once a week because people could not find their way through.
No way.
But now it's all paths and it's all colored, so I think we're going to be fine.
That's why I wanted to stay by you, because mazes freak me out.
Okay, so this is not a corn maze though, so
Okay.
it's a lava maze.
All right.
But I think once we get down, you can kind of understand why it was a little confusing. And but ultimately, the other explanation, of course, is that this was a huge troll party, and they were having a lot of fun here, dancing through the night and drinking way too much. And suddenly the sun came up, and boom, they're all over the place. And if you kind of look into the rocks, you can definitely see the faces of a lot of these trolls.
We have extremely rich mythology and folklore, and I think weaving that in a little bit is important, because unless you see the country in its stark contrasts and its edged mountains and the lava fields there, definitely you can see faces and shapes in there that are really lifelike. And you kind of need to see that to really understand how nature does affect folklore and affect stories. So we do a little bit of jokes, so hay bales or candy for the trolls is kind of just a joking way of saying whatever you see can always be construed as something mystical or magical if your mind is there. And that is a way, for me at least, to present Iceland, is that you kind of take it in as what you see and what you could see.
Better watch out for your camera there, buddy. You're gonna go, whoa! One day I said to GB, Iceland is both very old and very young, isn't it? Meaning that the land was young from a geologic standpoint, but the culture was old. He smiled and said, Americans look at Iceland and think our culture is old. That's because America is so very young.
The world changes and continents move and break up and come back together, and even though that is incomprehensible in terms of our lifetime, it is comprehensible when you see it as a sampling in a country like Iceland. So I think that is interesting, and that is due to the use of it geologically.
Iceland is amazing, but there is this one part of Iceland where there are a lot of flies. They don't bite, they're just there, everywhere. Don't worry, just buy a mosquito net and keep exploring. Word of the wise, put on your mosquito net inside.
Oh, yes. Oh, one's inside. One's inside.
That was intense.
This is part of the Continental Divide, where you can stand on North America and on Europe at the same time.
Let's get the South Carolina squat.
Yes! Icelanders are serious off-roaders. He took us by a shop that builds off-road vehicles. I just love that GB took us here. I'm sure this wasn't a normal part of the tour, but he knew that this group in particular would appreciate this kind of place.
Just laughing at all the boys.
Because we come halfway across the world to look at some guy's someday projects in his backyard.
That's different than the ones in my backyard.
It made us feel more like family than customers. GB's really good at that.
In the United States, we have areas that are open travel, and you don't necessarily have to stay on a trail. But here in Iceland, they are very, very strict about the fact that you cannot drive off-road. They want you to be driving on the designated roads and on the designated trails. And I really think that we can take a page from that in the States, and we need to be better about that, being good land stewards and making sure that we're not impacting the land in a negative way. Here, the reason why they're so strict about it is because the growing season is so short that it can take 100 years for the vegetation to cover up the tire tracks. And the soil, the volcanic soil, is so loose that your tire tracks impact that much more deeply. But the same thing applies in the United States. We go off the road and you're marring the landscape. You're not leaving it better than you came to see it.
We can all do good in this world. We can all make it a better place, but that requires you to think beyond yourself. And when we think about the world that we have here and the wonderful, beautiful places and different landscapes and things we have, it's so important to think beyond yourself for future generations.
Diamond Beach. Not too long ago, these chunks of ice were icebergs, broken off the largest glacier in Iceland. Scientists estimate this ice has been ice for 1,000 years, which means it was formed at about the same time that Leif Erikson from Iceland became the first European to visit North America. These are the eggs at Mary Bay. 34 granite eggs, representing the eggs of the different kinds of birds that nest there. Most of us thought the eggs were very cool. Phil was bothered that the eggs weren't made to scale.
I need scale.
But that's just Phil being Phil. A little over 1,000 years ago, the leaders of Iceland gathered here and formed what would become one of the longest continually operating parliaments in the world.
I guess I'm selfish, I don't want to share the nature views with too many people. I like to get out of the crowds and kind of have the sense of how small we are in the great picture of things, rather than being a group of people seeing something that everybody else is seeing at the same time.
GB deserves his own movie, but this will have to do for now. Born and raised in Iceland, he's been taking people on tours since he was a teenager.
So gather round. As David Attenborough would say, we are here
Yes.
in southeast Iceland, close to the town of Hub. Come on.
I asked him if I could take some sand home with me, or if that was frowned upon. He smiled and said, Go ahead, we're still making it. He was always trying to milk the most out of every day. This was the one time I saw him looking even a little stressed, trying to figure out how to show us as much as possible and still get us to dinner on time.
Yeah, it's gonna set us back a little bit of time. Everything is. But, yeah.
He tried to teach us Icelandic.
Let me say that slowly. Eyjafjallajökull. I'm gonna make that sound. That's actually a double L. Yeah, so it's almost like a D with the L. Erla.
Mari u erda.
Erla.
One of his running jokes was reminding everyone to turn on their headlights.
Just kind of hang out here with our headlights on until everybody's ready.
GB made us feel excited and safe at the same time. We knew we were in good hands, but we were also having the time of our lives.
It's probably not going to be nearly as good as yesterday, but you know, we'll keep on trying. All right.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes. Let's get Steven in a vehicle and get out of here. It's kind of cool to go different routes from time to time and see things you haven't seen for a while and revisit. And there's what is it, something like 26,000 miles of roads in Iceland. Only about 6,000 of them are actually paved. So you know, I like to spend my time on the other 20,000 or so. Okay, did you have some of the jerkied fish?
I did not. Is that all right?
Just rip it out. There you go.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thanks, Jimmy.
I'm sorry, GB, but this was the only food on the trip that I did not like.
I mean, if I moved here, I think the first thing I would do is immediately gain about 40 pounds because of all the good cheeses and breads and...
I do want to give them a shout out that they had brownies for breakfast.
Brownies for breakfast.
Right?
And salted caramel.
How is that not an American thing?
The salted caramel on the little baby pancake.
Salted caramel to go on the baby pancake.
It was delicious.
I am not a fish person. Something in me just does not trust meat without feet. But in Iceland, I ate fish every day, and I loved it. We had several different kinds of fish, including sushi. This bread was baked in a geyser. The meat and potatoes was the best I've ever had. We also ate lamb. Those sheep weren't just for sweaters, you know. Dessert, dessert, dessert. Thank you for the dessert. Icelandic butter is so good, it should be its own food group. Breakfast was the same everywhere we went. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. We had lunch on the go a few times. Better than your average picnic.
We're going to places that... Hey Phil, eat an orange.
Fried bread for lunch this day. Hot, savory, comfort food. Ice cream, you scream. We went to Iceland and had ice cream. Sorry. Yes, there are hot dogs in Iceland. GB said we should order them with everything.
What is everything?
So everything is ketchup,
Fine.
mustard, remoulade, which is a mayonnaise sauce with like pickles and little spices in it. It has raw onions and fried onions.
The fried onions?
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
Before we even left on the trip, I asked GB if I could film in a kitchen of one of the restaurants. I didn't think I'd get to. I figured there are probably rules against that kind of thing. Remember when I said GB is the coolest Icelander? Rub 23 is one of the highest rated restaurants in Iceland. I knew I was a changed man when we got back to Reykjavik, and I ordered fish and chips of my own free will and choice. I'm not saying I'm a fish person now, but I know what I'll be eating when I come back to Iceland the next time.
So yesterday we went on this Zodiac ride, and in case you're uncultured and don't know what a Zodiac is, it's like a boat with, it's like a raft boat thing. Anyhow,
glaciers are really like extremely slow running rivers.
Right.
So it's not a glacier unless it's actually moving. If it's just an ice, it's just ice.
Yeah, Alderman, and this is Alden right here. We're going to be our captains and guides for the tour today. And before we get started, just some safety information that we need to go over. So you guys got these very fashionable suits from David. These are flotation suits, and they keep you afloat in the water. And if they don't keep you afloat enough, you've got the life vests here as well. These should self-inflate if you fall in. If they don't, well then, tough luck.
You can't get much more off-road than a boat. Iceland is home to the largest glacier in Europe. It occupies more than 3,000 square miles and has an average thickness of 1,200 feet.
But I am curious, and I want to know what you guys think, how optimistic / pessimistic. An iceberg this size, how long would this last in here until it's melted?
Until it can make its way out under the bridge?
No, until it fits in a glass of whiskey.
5 years.
Oh.
2 months?
I think we'd all put that
2 months?
way longer than
2
months.
Really good first guess. What did you think? 30 days a month. 30 days?
2 years.
You're optimistic. You're optimistic.
Wow.
It would be about 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
2 weeks?
Oh, no way.
That melts
gone in
because
2
if
weeks.
it melts, it's 180
That
feet
thing,
down.
2
It has
weeks.
to melt down.
Something that big melts in 2 weeks, and 90% of it is below the water. I hope you don't mind, but I keep a journal, and this is what I wrote on my second to last day in Iceland. I was sitting in the back seat of one of the Toyotas today, and I rolled down the window and stared at the glacier in the mountains nearby. I must have stared at it for 10 minutes. It was alive. I could feel it moving. I sensed the path that it had forged through the mountains. It would somehow be wrong to not recognize the living nature of it. Staring at that glacier made everything make sense. All of my struggles, especially over the last 9 months, were brought into focus. My efforts to change, to work to be who I'm supposed to be. I'm realizing the crucial nature of the journey and the importance of prizing it over the destination. The glacier doesn't have an objective. It has an existence. It is doing exactly what it's supposed to. And so am I. Thanks for letting me share that. And now, I'm gonna take a bite out of a 1,000-year-old piece of ice.
I love how everyone's first instinct is to just eat it.
Not bad.
All right, Phil, hold it up in the air like it's a trophy, and we'll get the ice. The big.
Oh, it's a beaut.
Jack! Jack!
When NASA was preparing to go to the moon, they searched the world over for a place that could stand in for the lunar surface. Iceland delivered. Now, obviously, I've never been to the moon. But since I've been to Iceland, I feel like I understand a little bit of what Buzz meant when he stepped off the lunar module ladder and uttered the words, "Magnificent desolation." North America and Europe share a tectonic plate boundary that is thousands of miles long. Right in the middle of that boundary is Iceland. North America is moving west and south at about 1 inch per year. Europe is also moving west and south, but not quite as fast. Iceland is what happens when two continents have a tug of war. Earthquakes, volcanoes, and lava. Lots and lots of lava. I kept expecting to see a couple of hobbits as we drove through here. Razor-sharp rocks, tight turns, basalt roads, black, crusty lava, as far as the eye could see. Traveling across this alien landscape was the most transported I felt the entire trip. We left the whole world behind. I've never felt more lost and found at the same time. And on the other side of this barren plain, growing right up through the lava, was green, and lots of it. Iceland. What a gift.
There's just some connection that you get that is deeper and richer than words. To me, Iceland helps me be more open to things that are possible to feel and impossible to see or describe.
Excellent question. So, what it means to be a Viking. We throw that around kind of as fun because that is of course part of our heritage. I do feel like from the old it means somebody that is independent, stands up and is proud of his heritage and wants to be free and unruled, and hence I am Viking.